At this time, Abeo's ability to reduce coldness, unblock the meridians, and stop vomiting and epistaxis was in response to the symptoms of eliminating evil spirits. It was obvious that the evil spirits had been broken, and he only needed to refresh his mind and regain his soul, and he would be cured. Grandpa, Feng'er has finally inherited the inheritance today. In the future, he will practice hard and become a living god like Grandpa. Yifeng trembled with excitement, bit his lip, clenched his fists and swore secretly in his heart. Fengzi, why is this child still so lethargic and not crying? Daniel's wife carefully buttoned up her son's clothes and asked worriedly. Yifeng, why are you so stunned? Auntie called Yifeng. When he came to his senses, he remembered that he was missing the last medicine to refresh himself and rejuvenate his soul. The child's 3 souls and 7 souls were originally unstable before the age of 7, and were easily affected by evil winds and evil spirits. Be careful, if your soul is damaged, you are in danger of becoming dementia. Brother Daniel, let's go, we have to go out quickly. Yifeng returned to the hut, took a flashlight and a wine bottle, and called Li Daniel out. The two of them picked up their hoes and walked to the cemetery with greetings. Li Daniel didn't ask any questions. In order to save his son's life, let alone going to the cemetery, even if Yifeng asked him to dig up dead people, he would not hesitate. In fact, he was feeling angry at the moment. My ancestors, they originally expected you to protect their descendants, but if you don't protect them, that's all, and you've even harmed your own family. The cemetery is at the west end of the village. The mountain wind is whistling and it is surrounded by old fir trees. When the wind blows, the old cedar forest whistles. It is the Qingming festival again, and Yifeng's heart is filled with fear. If it were not to break Bao'er's evil spirit, Yifeng would not have come to this ghost place in the middle of the night. Before reaching the grave of Mr. Li Daniel's family, Yifeng suddenly stopped. His eyes fell on an isolated grave in the valley. The soil on the grave seemed to have been renovated, like a new grave. Brother Daniel, whose grave is this? Yifeng asked. Grandma Yu in the village just died a few days ago. She was an old widow and no one took care of her. She was left in the village for 3 days and then buried hastily. When I passed by today, I felt pitiful and deliberately burned her. He bought some paper money. Hey, he is also a miserable man. Li Daniel said. That's right, this is what I'm looking for. Yifeng looked around. Grandma Yu was buried in this mountain recess. The north, east and west sides were surrounded by earth slopes, which were extremely tight. According to Feng Shui, this was the funeral gate. The tomb is the house of the dead, that is, the house where the dead live. The 3 sides are so tightly clamped, it is like locking the person in a living cage, unable to move forward or retreat. If it is completely blocked, the breath will be trapped inside. As long as no one picks up the coffin, everything will be fine. However, the person who was buried must have felt that the place was a bit tight, so he dug out a corner of the pit and dug out half of it to the only opening in the southeast. The tomb immediately became a murderous tomb. Why is this? The south is the main fire of the 5 elements. If the coffin is in the right direction and the fire position is yang, and there is no shelter here, no matter how powerful the evil spirit is, it cannot be hidden under the sun. Therefore, originally the coffin was buried upright and could seal the evil spirit. But now it was a few inches to the southeast. Yifeng calculated a little from the edge of the earth bag on the grave and found that it was at least 9 inches to the southeast. The wood in the east is the main tree, and the wood is born, and the evil spirit blows out from this door. If there is more fire in the wood, the evil spirit and the fire are combined, the evil spirit in the southeast will be powerful and domineering. Qing Tian's suicide note says that 7 inches to the southeast is the evil spirit of turning back. This mother-in-law's coffin is a full 9 inches off. If you are trapped in a funeral home, can it be a serious evil to look back? I thought that if Li Daniel hadn't been kind-hearted and burned paper money for Grandma Yu, Bao'er might not be alive now. Ah! Why is it so cold in the late spring this year? Li Daniu rubbed his hands, sneezed, and cursed. He saw Yi Feng looking around the grave for a long time, blabbering, and frowning so much that it was difficult to urge him. After all, he was here to help Bauer with something. Brother Daniu, who buried Granny you here? Yi Feng asked with a frown. Li Daniu said, village party secretary, the old widow has no land at home, so this is some public land squeezed out for her by the village. Hey, this is also a no-brainer. No one is willing to give up their land to bury a widow. Rural people think that widows are unlucky, and no one is willing to touch this brow. Yi Feng felt sad at this moment. If his aunt hadn't taken him in, wouldn't he have been a helpless orphan? He originally wanted to completely seal the shady house by exposing it to lime for 9 days, but when he thought of how pitiful the old widow was, he decided to seal it instead of sealing it. There are only 2 ways to solve the evil feng shui situation, one is to solve it, and the other is to seal it. The sealing method has completely destroyed the old widow's shady house, and naturally there is no evil spirit left, but it is like burning down someone else's house. The sealing method is simple, but it is still a bit overbearing. This old widow is also a pitiful person, so let's use the solution. The solution is of course to calm down the resentment and evil spirits. In fact, the method is very simple, but it is extremely difficult to operate. Brother Daniu, do you want to save Bauer? Yi Feng asked. Li Daniu sneezed twice in a row, and Yi Feng pulled him away. This guy was standing at the entrance of the southeast gate. Fortunately, he was strong and energetic, otherwise he would definitely have followed Bauer's path. Fengzi, just say it. As long as it's not harmful to the world, I will do it. Li Daniu was also afraid that Yi Feng would ask him to dig the grave. This is an immoral thing. Yi Feng rolled his eyes and had an idea in his mind. He immediately chuckled and said, Brother Daniu, let me teach you a method that will not only save Bauer's life, but also ensure that your family will have smooth sailing and safety in the future. When Daniel heard this, he was overjoyed and urged him to explain the truth quickly. The tomb was extremely evil, and Yi Feng was shivering from the cold at the moment. He asked Daniel for a cigarette and smoked 2 bubbles. A godly relative, the higher the seniority, the better. It can not only stabilize his destiny, but also resolve his frailty. This way, he is guaranteed to live a long life. Yi Feng had seen Bauer's face before, and it was originally a sign of longevity and smoothness. In order to help the old widow get out of the funeral, and at the same time help Bauer get rid of evil spirits, Yi Feng had to lie about it. That's great. As long as Yaozi is good, I can worship him 10 or 8 times. Li Daniu rubbed his hands and agreed. I think let Bauer accept the old widow as my godmother. The old widow has no children in her life. If Bauer becomes her godson, he will be pampered by heaven and keep him healthy. Yi Feng turned to look at him. He was looking at the grave, but his eyes were squinting to observe Li Daniu's expression secretly. If other people are afraid that they will slap him on the ears, the widow is an unlucky person. Anyone who wants to recognize a relative is also recognizing a longevity and a lucky star with many children and grandchildren. How can anyone recognize a widow? Isn't this looking for bad luck? Li Daniu's face was extremely ugly, but he could not get angry. Fengzi, don't make fun of me. If your sister-in-law finds out, she won't strangle me to death. Yi Feng couldn't help but tell the mystery, and Li Daniu wouldn't follow it. He immediately laughed and said, Brother Daniu, you don't know how good the old widow is. Let's dig it out. Li Daniu was stunned, thinking that Yi Feng was probably talking nonsense, saying good things about the old widow, but then letting people dig up her grave. Fengzi, I know your grandpa is very capable. It's not that I don't believe you. If my baby really gets better in this widow's favor, I won't say anything and let Bauer recognize her as my grandma. Daniel is here. He spat on his hand and dug it open with the light of his flashlight. After a few shovels, a few fat earthworms emerged from the soil, which were as thick as an index finger and about the size of a small eel. Earthworms like places where evil spirits accumulate. This is a new grave, and the fact that it has attracted such large earthworms shows that the grave has a very strong evil spirit. If it is not resolved, it will harm other people sooner or later. It's up to you whether you admit it or not. I'm too lazy to order you. If it weren't for Bauer's usual sweetness of calling him uncle, I wouldn't reveal the secret. Yi Feng asked Daniel to stop, picked 2 fat ones, put them in a bottle, pretended to be enigmatic, ignored Daniel, and walked towards the village. When we got to the back mountain, we took the rainwater from the bamboo tube and walked home quickly. Then I asked my aunt to remove the heads and tails of the earthworms, wash them clean, simmer them in a medicine jar for an hour, take them out, filter out the residue, and quickly asked Daniel's wife to pour it into a bao. Earthworms like evil places, not because they are evil things. On the contrary, their 5 elements belong to earth, but they are yang soil. They have a restraining effect on evil spirits and can swallow up evil spirits. Therefore, their flesh can lift chi and restore energy. God, the effect of exorcising evil spirits. As soon as the decoction was taken into his stomach, Po's stomach began to growl loudly, and he vomited several times. The evil spirit and turbidity disappeared, and the child's soul was purified, warmed, and soon he became energetic. Yelling and crying loudly, shouting that he was hungry. Although this child had gone to Han before, he had always been dull and lifeless. At this moment, the black spots in his eyes have disappeared, his cries are harsh, and his legs and feet are strong, but his face is still a little pale. After his aunt cooked sugar porridge for him, the child ate 2 large bowls in a row. His face gradually became rosy, and he ran around the house having fun. He looked like a child who had just walked away from the gate of hell. Oh, what a good baby! Everyone had been busy for most of the night. Auntie was originally worried about Yi Feng, fearing that something would go wrong and harm the child. Who would have thought that this usually shameless lazy person would really hurt the child? When I came back from the Lord of Hell, I couldn't express my excitement. Bauer, quickly kneel down and kowtow to Uncle Fengzi. Fengzi, brother and sister-in-law are kowtowing to you. If it weren't for you, you kid, you wouldn't be able to say anything right now. Daniel and his wife looked at the jumping child, and they knelt down and cried excitedly. Brother Daniel, sister-in-law, I, Yi Feng, grew up in Uncle Lao Zhen's house. I also know that it is my duty to practice medicine and save people. If you want to thank me, just thank my aunt. Yi Feng quickly helped the 2 of them up, walked to the side, and winked at his aunt proudly, thinking to himself that he finally saved his aunt's face this time. I don't have any credit, it's because this child has a good life and is lucky. Auntie sent the couple out of the yard with greetings, but she was very happy in her heart. Although the child's mouth was a bit swollen, her heart was the same. The old man in his family is as kind as he is. I just don't know if he really knows something, or if he's just a blind cat and a dead rat. When Auntie returned to the yard, the lights in Yi Feng's room came on again. To say that Bauer is fine, the happiest person is probably not Brother Daniel and his wife, but Yi Feng. Yi Feng had read Qing Tian's suicide note for so many years before, and was called a madman by his buddies in the dormitory. It was impossible to say that he didn't feel uncomfortable at all. Now he went to save people according to the book, and the method really came true. It shows that his hard work over the years has really paid off. Thinking of this, Yi Feng couldn't help but think of Bai Yakin. He vowed that within 3 years, he would soar to the sky, become famous in the provincial capital, and marry Bai Yakin with all his glory, and the only thing he relied on was this Qing Tian's suicide note. It can be said that today is Yi Feng's first step towards Yakin. Early the next morning, Li Daniu and his wife brought 2 roosters and a basket of eggs to Uncle Zhen's house to thank Yi Feng. However, they were shocked when they saw Yi Feng. One night suddenly, Yi Feng's eyes turned blood red, and upon closer inspection, they were all bloodshot. I said, Fengzi, what's wrong with you? It's not because you helped my family to do that thing yesterday, and you bumped into something, right? The honest and honestly Dainu had an apology all over his face and put one hand on his head. I scratched my head and didn't know what to say to express my gratitude. Oh, no, brother Dainu, I'm fine, don't worry. Of course Yi Feng is fine. Anyone with some ability can solve the problem of turning back, and there won't be any backlash at all. Appear. His eyes were red. It was simply because he was too excited the night before and couldn't sleep. It's okay. Li Dainu muttered, but he looked unsure of his heart. He opened his mouth, as if he wanted to say something, but couldn't. Brother Dainu, if you have something to say, just say it. Why are you hesitating? Among our fellow villagers, who is following whom? Yi Feng could naturally tell that Li Dainu was embarrassed to say something. He, Fengzi, you brat, even brother Dainu can't hide it from you. Li Dainu scratched her head again. No, you said the day before that you wanted our little girl to recognize her as a godson. Not only it can save your son's life, and it can also ensure that our family will have smooth sailing in peace in the future. You said admitting to the marriage. Oh, this is about it. Yi Feng couldn't help but reach out and pat his head. He was so excited that he had cured Bao yesterday, so he actually forgot about it. Brother Dainu, don't worry, this matter is taken care of by me. The matter of recognizing one's parents has been around since ancient times, but it is usually done by worshipping Lord Impermanence. The way to worship Lord Impermanence is, the child's parents first make a brand new white shirt, then bring it to the temple and use it to go to the temple. In exchange for the old clothes of the idol of impermanence, they burn them with soju, sesame cakes, incense candles, and silver ingots. Finally, the monks in the temple named Diji's son. From then on, every July, the child's parents would take the child to the temple to congratulate Master Wuchang on his birthday until the child reaches 16 years old. Now, it would be much easier for the children of Li Dainu's family to ask the old widow to be their godmother than to ask Master Wuchang. The first step is to carve a spiritual tablet out of locust wood, on which the old widow's name and birth date must be engraved. The reason why locust wood is used is because locust wood is yin, which is more suitable for the spiritual consciousness of the deceased to attach to. When you are a child, place a spiritual tablet in front of the grave, prepare a pair of white cloth shoes, and burn it in front of the grave with soju, sesame cakes, incense candles, and silver ingots. Let the child kowtow 3 times to the place where the fire is burning, and then write the child's hand with his own hand. The hair wrapped in yellow paper with the birth date and zodiac sign is thrown into the fire to show that it has a ghostly bond with the person being worshipped. Then just take the spirit tablet home and worship it. After hearing what Yi Feng said, Li Dainu went back to prepare. Fortunately, these things were not difficult to get. As for the Sephora Mu Ling tablet, which took a little time, Carpenter Lu from the village entrance spent an hour to get it. Then he waited. When I was young, we went to the old widow's grave to pay our respects and kiss her. There was nothing wrong with the wedding ceremony. After the whole thing was done, the cold air that originally filled the valley dissipated, which meant that the old widow's resentment had been resolved. To say that this old widow has been a widow for her whole life, and was stabbed in the back, and that she is a scourge that has cut off her children and grandchildren, is the biggest resentment in her life. Now that she has a grandson, she will naturally become auspicious. Qing no longer has any evil spirits. It is worth mentioning that at the moment when the evil spirit of Jia Sangmen was resolved, Yi Feng vaguely felt a weak warm current flowing into his body. He felt it carefully, but found nothing strange, so he had to give up. Fengzi, do you have anything to do this morning? If you have nothing, I'll run an errand for your uncle General. I'm old and my legs are weak and I'm too lazy to move. After breakfast the next day, Yi Feng, just as he was about to go back to his hut and continue reading, he was stopped by Uncle Jen, who was filling tobacco into his cigarette bag. Uncle, tell me, what's the matter? This is a big deal for me, so I have to stick with you first. Yi Feng was not dissatisfied at all with Uncle Lao Zhen's assignment. Over the years, he had relied on Uncle Zhen was brought back to life, let alone running errands, even asking him to go down the river to fish for the moon. Yi Feng didn't even bother to say anything. You stinky boy, you just have a sweet mouth. Uncle Zhen lit up his pipe, took out a piece of paper from his old coat, spread it out and handed it to Yi Feng. Yi Feng looked at it and saw that it was some penicillin, Gatiza Western medicine such as Xingxing. I guess the price is more than 300 yuan. Uncle Zhen's big hands rummaged back and forth in the various pockets of his body, but in the end he only took out a crumpled $50 bill, 3 $10 bills, and 7 or 8 50-cent pieces of change. Uncle Zhen chewed his teeth, put all the money into Yi Feng's hand, and shouted to the aunt who was cleaning the dishes next to him, "Family, give Fengzi 300 yuan, I don't have it here." "Oh, Fengzi, come in. Auntie will get you money," Auntie said and took Yi Feng into the back room. Opening a cabinet painted with red paint next to the Kong, he took out a small cloth bag and opened it. Inside the small cloth bag was a stack of banknotes, but the denominations were not large. They were all 10s or 20 yuan. After counting them, the total is only 201. Auntie frowned, glanced at the outer room, reached out and took out a red cloth bag from under a faded old cotton-padded jacket, opened the red cloth, and found a silver bracelet inside. There is nothing remarkable about the workmanship of this silver bracelet. Apart from the age that can be seen at a glance, the most valuable thing is probably the material itself. However, Yi Feng knew in his heart that this bracelet had special meaning to his aunt. It was her aunt's dowry and an heirloom that had been passed down in her family for several generations. "Auntie, what are you?" It's not that Yi Feng doesn't understand what auntie means, but how can he accept it? Auntie made a low-pitched gesture and glanced towards the outer room. Apparently she didn't want Uncle Zhen to know about this, so she pulled Yi Feng to her side and whispered in his ear, "Fengzi, you pawn this first, don't let your uncle know. It won't be easy for your uncle to redeem it after a while when he has some living money, so don't let him do it for it. Don't worry about this little thing." Seeing his aunt put the bracelet into his hand, Yi Feng had mixed feelings in his heart. Doctors in big cities always make a lot of money, but in this small mountain village, kind-hearted barefoot doctors often end up broke. Sometimes when villagers come to see some minor illnesses, Uncle Zhen won't ask for money from them. Sometimes people who come to get medicine are short of money, so they owe money first. This year is the time when things are easy to get sick, and people who owe money, if there are too many, the family will not be able to make ends meet. On the way to the county seat, Yi Feng had been wondering, could he do something to make some money? Although it was important to study that Qing Tian's suicide note, Yi Feng felt really bad about just eating and watching Uncle Zhen's family struggling to survive. How about, just set up a stall in a prosperous place in the county to show people feng shui? Yi Feng smiled bitterly and shook his head. This profession became more and more popular as he got older. Even if he was really capable, no one might believe him, a young man with no hair at all. Changfen County is a major tourist county. The county seat is very prosperous, even better than the urban area. There is also everything you need in the flower and bird market antique street. Yi Feng went to the pawn shop to pawn a bracelet, and then went to the drugstore to buy what Uncle Zhen wanted. For medicine, I plan to go to the antique street. Of course, Yi Feng went to the antique street not to imitate the arty manners of the rich or to find a few treasures with a sense of luck. He came purely for the feng shui instruments. Yi Matzi, the grandfather of Yi Matzi, who has been his master since he was a child, has seen a lot of magic weapons. The older the objects are, the better they are when used. Even if he has no money and cannot afford to buy anything, Yi Feng still wants to see them in advance. Look, after all, he plans to eat feng shui in the future. However, when he stepped into the antique street, Yi Feng suddenly became dumbfounded. It wasn't that there was any great excitement in the antique street, but in his eyes, the shops, street stalls, and even the objects people were playing with were all glowing black or white, and there were some during the period. Various colors such as red and green make the entire antique street look bizarre and indescribable. After being stunned for a long time at the street corner with his mouth open, Yi Feng suddenly slapped himself on the head, and then almost jumped up with excitement. He remembered the records in the Qingtian suicide note. Open his eyes, he has opened his eyes.